The knock came on a Tuesday morning, sharp and insistent. I opened the door to find a man in a charcoal suit, holding a leather portfolio. "Emily Hartwell?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. I nodded, confused. He handed me a business card, my name printed across it, but beneath it read, "Debtor, account number 47829. My stomach dropped. "Your mother didn't mention you'd be the one paying for this," he said, his voice carrying a hint of practiced sympathy that felt hollow. I stared at the card, my hands trembling. What loans? What was he talking about? There must be some mistake, I managed to say, but he was already pulling out documents. My name, my social security number, my forged signature on loan applications I'd never seen. The realization hit like ice water. My mother had stolen my identity. She'd used me, her own daughter, as a personal ATM. The collector handed me a stack of papers, 12 different loans totaling $127,000. "You have 30 days, he said, then walked away, leaving me standing in my doorway, shaking. I called my mother immediately, my fingers barely able to dial. "Mom, what did you do?" My voice cracked. There was a pause, then her familiar tone, too light, too casual. "Oh, Emily, you got the paperwork already? I was going to tell you." "Tell me?" My mind reeled. "You took out loans in my name. Over $100,000. She sighed, as if I were being dramatic. "It's not that serious, honey. You make good money now. You can handle it." Handle it? The audacity sucked the air from my lungs. "I didn't sign anything. You forged my signature." "That's fraud, Mom. That's illegal." Another sigh. "Don't be so dramatic. Family helps family. Besides, I needed the money for important things." Important things. I thought of her new car, the expensive furniture I'd seen last time I visited, the vacation photos on her social media. My success at work, the promotion I'd earned through late nights and sacrifice, had made me a target. She saw my achievements and decided I owed her. I couldn't sleep that night. The betrayal twisted in my chest like a knife. I'd always put my mother first, even when it meant sacrificing my own dreams. When she needed help with rent, I paid it. When she wanted money for emergencies, I sent it without question. I'd been the dutiful daughter, the responsible one, while she played the victim who deserved everything handed to her. The next morning, I called her again. This time, I wasn't asking for explanations. "You're going to fix this," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "I'm not paying for loans I didn't take out." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Emily, don't be ridiculous. The loans are in your name. Legally, you're responsible." "I'm sorry, but that's just how it works." The words hit me like a slap. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending to be. "You've never cared about me, have you?" I said quietly. "Only yourself." The line went silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice cold. "I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. The least you can do is help me now." I hung up and immediately started investigating. I called the bank listed on the first loan document, my hands still shaking. The representative confirmed my worst fears, 12 loans, all opened within the past 2 years, all using my information. "Did you report your identity stolen?" she asked. My mother took them out, I admitted, the words tasting bitter. There was a pause. "That's still identity theft, ma'am. You'll need to file a police report." A police report? Against my own mother. The thought made me sick, but what choice did I have? I requested copies of all the loan applications, and when they arrived 3 days later, I spread them across my dining room table. Each signature was a crude imitation of mine. Each address was hers. The paper trail was extensive: personal loans, credit cards, even a car loan. She'd been systematic, calculating. This wasn't desperation. This was exploitation. As I stared at the documents, memories flooded back. My childhood hadn't been normal, though I'd convinced myself it was. My mother had always made me feel responsible for her happiness, her financial stability, her emotional well-being. When I got my first job at 16, she convinced me to give her half my paycheck for rent. When I earned a scholarship to college, she cried about being abandoned, making me feel guilty for wanting an education. Every achievement I celebrated, she found a way to diminish. When I graduated with honors, she complained about the cost of attending the ceremony. When I got my first real job, she asked when I'd start giving back to her. The pattern was clear now. She'd been grooming me my entire life to be her financial safety net. Every guilt trip, every manipulation, every time she made me feel like I owed her, it had all been building to this moment. She'd taken my identity, my credit, my future, and felt entitled to it. I needed advice, someone who could help me see clearly through the fog of betrayal. I reached out to Marcus, my mentor at work. He'd guided me through challenging projects and career decisions, and I trusted him. We met for coffee, and I told him everything. Marcus listened carefully, his expression growing darker as I spoke. When I finished, he leaned back and shook his head. Emily, this is serious. You need to protect yourself legally immediately. He pulled out his phone and texted me contact information for a lawyer who specialized in identity theft and family law. But more than that, he continued, you need to set boundaries. Real ones. Your mother has been manipulating you your entire life. This loan situation is just the most extreme version of what she's always done. His words gave me strength. For years, I'd felt like something was wrong but couldn't name it. Now, someone else saw it too. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being abused. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't just fix this mess. I would rebuild my entire life without my mother in it. I opened my laptop and started working on something I'd been putting off for years. My own consulting business. At work, I was a senior financial analyst, but I'd always dreamed of independence, of building something that was entirely mine. My mother had always discouraged it. Why take the risk, she'd say. You have a good job. Don't be greedy. Now I understood. She didn't want me to succeed beyond her control. She wanted me dependent, or at least feeling obligated. I designed a logo, chose a business name, Hartwell Financial Solutions, and ordered business cards. When they arrived a week later, I held one in my hand and felt something shift inside me. This card represented freedom. It represented a future where I controlled my own destiny. My mother had tried to define me as a debtor. I would define myself as a success. The lawyer Marcus recommended, Patricia Vance, was sharp and efficient. In our first meeting, she reviewed all the documentation I'd gathered. This is a clear case of identity theft, she said. The question is how you want to proceed. You can file criminal charges, which would likely result in your mother facing prosecution. Or you can pursue civil action to have the debts removed from your name. I felt sick at the thought of my mother in jail, but Patricia's next words stopped me. If you don't take action, these debts will destroy your credit for years. They'll affect your ability to buy a home, start a business, even rent an apartment. Your mother stole your future. She was right. This wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. What do I need to do? I asked. Patricia outlined the steps: file a police report, submit identity theft affidavits to the credit bureaus, and prepare for the possibility that my mother would retaliate. Family cases are the hardest, Patricia warned. She'll try to manipulate you, make you feel guilty. You need to be prepared for that. I called my mother one more time before moving forward with legal action. I owed her that much, or at least I thought I did. Mom, I've talked to a lawyer. You need to come clean about the loans and work with me to fix this. Her response was immediate and cold. Are you threatening me? Your own mother. I'm giving you a chance to make this right, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. If you don't, I'll have no choice but to file charges. She laughed again, that same dismissive sound that made my blood boil. You won't do that. You're not that cruel, Emily. I raised you better than that. The manipulation was so blatant now that I could see it clearly. She was betting on my guilt, on my conditioning to always put her first. I'm done, Mom, I said quietly. You made your choice when you stole from me. Stop being so dramatic, she snapped. It's just money. I needed it more than you did. You're being selfish. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from anger, from clarity, from finally seeing who she really was. Filing the police report was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. The officer taking my statement looked sympathetic but puzzled. Your mother did this, he asked, as if confirming he'd heard correctly. Yes, I said, my voice firm. She stole my identity and opened multiple fraudulent accounts. The report took 2 hours to complete. Every detail had to be documented: the loans, the forged signatures, the timeline of when I discovered the theft. When it was done, the officer handed me a case number. This will help with the credit bureaus, he said. But be prepared, family cases can get complicated. I knew what he meant. My mother wouldn't go quietly. But I'd already made my choice. That same week, I met with Patricia again to file the identity theft affidavits with all 3 credit bureaus. She also helped me place a fraud alert on my accounts and freeze my credit to prevent any new fraudulent activity. This is the nuclear option, Patricia explained. Once these affidavits are filed, the creditors will investigate. If they determine the loans were fraudulent, they'll pursue your mother for the debt. Good, I thought. Let them. Work became my refuge. 2 months after discovering the loans, I received a promotion to senior director, a position I'd been working toward for 3 years. My boss, Helen, called me into her office to share the news. You've earned this, Emily, she said warmly. Your analysis on the Westfield merger was exceptional. The board specifically requested you lead the next project. I should have felt elated, but the weight of everything at home dampened the joy. Still, the promotion came with a significant raise, money I could use to build my consulting business and, if necessary, fight a legal battle. That evening, I celebrated alone in my apartment with takeout and a glass of wine. I thought about calling someone, sharing the good news, but most of my friends were mutual friends with my mother. I couldn't trust who knew about the loans, who she'd manipulated with her version of events. So I sat alone, looking at my new business cards spread across the coffee table. I wasn't truly alone, I realized. I had myself. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. My mother's world began to unravel slowly, then all at once. The credit bureaus launched investigations into the fraudulent accounts. Creditors started calling her directly, demanding payment. She called me furious. You actually did it, she hissed. You reported me. Your own mother. You stole from me, I replied calmly. What did you expect? I expect my daughter to have some loyalty, she shouted. I gave you everything and this is how you repay me? I could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. The creditors weren't backing down, and she was realizing that her actions had real consequences. You need to fix this, she demanded. Call them off. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom. It was fraud. She started crying then, the tears I'd heard 1,000 times before. Manipulative tears designed to make me feel guilty, to make me give in. But this time, they didn't work. I have to go, I said, and hung up. My aunt, my mother's sister, called me the next day. Emily, your mother is devastated. Can't you work this out as a family? I wanted to scream. Where was this family when my mother was stealing from me? The call came late one night, 3 months after I'd filed the police report. My mother's voice was different this time, smaller, desperate. Emily, please. I'm begging you. The creditors are threatening to sue me. They're going to take everything. I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, phone pressed to my ear, feeling nothing. You did this to yourself, I said quietly. No, you did this to me, she screamed. I'm the reason you have anything. I raised you, sacrificed everything, and you've destroyed my life over some money. Some money. $127,000 was some money. 20 years of manipulating and guilt-tripping me into believing I owed her was just motherly love. You've never been there for me, I said, each word deliberate. Every sacrifice you claimed to have made was leverage. Every time you helped me, there were strings attached. You didn't raise me, you groomed me to be a retirement plan. How dare you? I'm done, Mom. Don't call me again. I blocked her number. Then I blocked her on every social media platform, every messaging app, every way she could reach me. The finality felt like both grief and liberation. The creditors moved quickly once the fraud was confirmed. Within weeks, I received letters from each company acknowledging that the accounts were fraudulent and removing them from my credit report. But the same letters also indicated they would pursue collection against my mother for the full amounts, plus legal fees and interest. Patricia called to update me on the civil case. The creditors have filed suit against your mother for the total amount of the loans. Given the evidence, they'll likely win. Her assets will be seized to pay the debts. I thought of her house, the one she'd refinanced twice to fund her lifestyle. The new car. The furniture. All of it bought with my stolen identity. She made her choices, I said. Yes, she did, Patricia agreed. And, Emily, I want you to know you did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you protected yourself. That took courage. I wasn't sure it was courage. It felt more like survival. But I appreciated her words nonetheless. That week, I got calls from 3 different relatives, all pleading my mother's case. I didn't engage. I simply said, I'm not discussing this, and ended the conversations. Something unexpected happened as news of the situation spread. People started reaching out to me for advice, friends of friends, colleagues, even strangers who'd heard my story through the grapevine. They all had similar situations, parents who'd stolen from them, family members who'd exploited their good credit, relatives who viewed them as piggy banks. I found myself giving advice, sharing what I'd learned about protecting your identity, setting boundaries, breaking free from financial abuse. One woman, barely 25, cried as she told me about her father opening credit cards in her name. I thought I had to just accept it because he's family, she said. You don't, I told her firmly. Family doesn't mean they get to destroy your future. I started a blog, documenting my journey and providing resources for others in similar situations. Within a month, it had thousands of followers. My mother had tried to define me as a victim, someone whose only purpose was to serve her needs. Instead, I'd become an advocate, someone who helped others escape the same trap. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother tried one last manipulation. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, 6 months after I'd blocked her number. I opened the door to find her looking haggard, older than I remembered. Emily, please, she said, her voice breaking. I have nothing left. They've taken everything. I'll be homeless. I stood in the doorway, not inviting her in. Part of me, the part that had been trained my entire life to fix her problems, wanted to help. But I'd learned that helping her meant destroying myself. You had options, Mom, I said quietly. You could have gotten a job. You could have lived within your means. Instead, you stole from your own daughter. I made mistakes, she admitted, and for a moment, I wondered if she might actually take responsibility. But you made a bigger mistake by turning on your own mother. This is your fault too. And there it was. Even now, even facing homelessness, she couldn't accept accountability. Everything was someone else's fault. Everything was my fault. Goodbye, Mom, I said, and closed the door. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't cry. I simply walked back to my laptop, where I was finishing a proposal for my first independent client. My business was growing. My future was mine. And I'd never look back. I moved out of my apartment into a small house I'd been saving for, a place that was entirely mine, with no memories of my old life attached to it. The day I got the keys, I sat on the empty living room floor and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. No more phone calls demanding money. No more guilt trips about being selfish. No more walking on eggshells, trying to keep someone else happy at the expense of my own well-being. I furnished the house slowly, deliberately, choosing each piece carefully. Everything had to be mine, earned with my own money, reflecting my own taste. My mother had filled her house with things bought on credit, with money she'd stolen. My house would be different. It would be honest. My first night there, I cooked dinner in my new kitchen and ate at a table I'd assembled myself. It was just pasta and salad, nothing fancy, but it tasted like freedom. I toasted with a glass of wine to the future, to new beginnings, to a life built on my own terms. The physical distance from my old life matched the emotional distance I'd created. I was finally free. Through my network of people who'd reached out for advice, I learned that my mother's financial situation had completely collapsed. The lawsuits from the creditors had resulted in judgments against her. Her house was foreclosed. Her car was repossessed. She'd moved in with my aunt, the same one who'd called begging me to fix things. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, but I felt no guilt either. She'd built her life on lies and exploitation, and eventually, that foundation crumbled. That was the natural consequence of her choices, not my responsibility. What struck me most was how many people still expected me to help her. "She's your mother," they'd say, as if that erased everything she'd done. Family forgives. But forgiveness didn't mean allowing someone to continue hurting you. It didn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. I'd learned that the hard way. My therapist, whom I'd started seeing after the initial discovery of the loans, helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for my mother's well-being. "You're allowed to protect yourself," she said repeatedly. "That's not cruelty. That's self-preservation." My consulting business took off faster than I'd expected. Within 8 months of launching, I had 12 regular clients and more inquiries than I could handle. The work was challenging and fulfilling in ways my corporate job had never been. I was helping small businesses optimize their finances, plan for growth, avoid the kind of debt traps that had consumed my mother. I hired an assistant, then a junior analyst. We rented a small office space downtown. The business cards I'd designed in the darkness of my mother's betrayal now represented something real and thriving. One afternoon, my assistant handed me an envelope that had been delivered by courier. Inside was a letter from one of my mother's creditors, the one handling the largest loan. "We understand you were a victim of identity theft in this matter," the letter read. "We wanted to inform you that we've successfully recovered a portion of the debt through liquidation of assets. Your credit report has been fully cleared, and we apologize for any distress this situation caused." I felt vindicated. The system had worked. Justice, in its bureaucratic way, had been served. That evening, I took my team out to celebrate hitting our first-year revenue goal. We laughed, we toasted, and for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued me for what I could create, not what they could take. My phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my mother. Somehow, she'd gotten a new phone, found a way to reach me despite the blocks. "Emily," she said, her voice hollow. "I don't have anything left. No house, no money, nothing. I need help." I closed my eyes, steadying myself. "I can't help you, Mom. You're my daughter," she cried. "You're supposed to take care of me. I'm old, I'm sick, I have nowhere to go." The manipulations were the same, but they didn't work anymore. I'd built immunity. "You made choices that led here," I said calmly. "You chose to steal from me instead of asking for help. You chose to lie instead of being honest. You chose your comfort over my future. These are the consequences. Please," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything." Part of me wanted to believe her. But I'd heard these words before, during every crisis when she needed something from me. The apologies always came with conditions, with expectations. "I hope you find help, Mom," I said. "But it can't come from me. Not anymore." I hung up and immediately blocked the new number. My hands shook, but not from uncertainty. From finality. This was truly the end. The legal process reached its conclusion a year after I'd first opened my door to that debt collector. All the fraudulent accounts were removed from my credit report. The creditors had recovered what they could from my mother's assets. Patricia called to tell me the case was officially closed. "You're free, Emily," she said. "Legally, financially, completely." I thanked her for everything and hung up. Free. The word felt heavy with meaning. I'd spent my entire life in a cage I didn't know existed, and now the door was open. My mother's schemes had collapsed entirely. According to my aunt, who sent occasional unwanted updates, my mother was working retail, living in a tiny apartment, struggling to pay bills she could no longer pass on to others. Her reputation in our hometown was destroyed. People knew what she'd done, and they kept their distance. I didn't celebrate her misery. I simply noted it as fact. Actions have consequences. The woman who'd tried to control every aspect of my life now had no control over her own. That wasn't my revenge. That was justice. I reinvested the money I'd saved from not paying fraudulent debts into my business. We expanded into a larger office, hired 3 more analysts, and took on corporate clients. Hartwell Financial Solutions was becoming known not just for excellent financial analysis, but for ethical practices and genuine client care. I implemented policies in my company that reflected everything I'd learned from my experience: transparency in all dealings, respect for boundaries, and zero tolerance for exploitation. My team appreciated the culture I'd built. "You treat us like people, not just employees," one analyst said during a performance review. That's rare. I thought about how my mother had treated me like a resource to be mined rather than a person to be loved. I'd built my business on the opposite principle. One evening, I received an email from a woman who'd read my blog. "Your story gave me the courage to leave an abusive relationship," she wrote. "I thought I owed my family everything, no matter how they treated me. You showed me I was wrong. Thank you for saving my life." I read the email 3 times, tears streaming down my face. My pain had purpose. My story had helped someone else escape. That meant something. 2 years after that first knock on my door, I stood in front of a room full of people at a financial abuse survivors conference. I'd been invited to speak about my experience, to share what I'd learned about identity theft and family manipulation. As I told my story, I watched faces in the audience nodding, recognizing themselves in my words. After the presentation, dozens of people approached me, sharing their own stories, asking for advice, thanking me for speaking openly about something that carried so much shame. "I thought I was the only one," one man said, tears in his eyes. "My father did the same thing." "I've never told anyone." "You're not alone," I assured him. "And it's not your fault." That conference led to more speaking opportunities, to consulting work helping organizations identify and prevent financial abuse, to a book deal to tell my full story. My mother had tried to reduce me to a source of money. Instead, I'd become a voice for thousands of people who'd been similarly exploited. The woman who'd stolen my identity had inadvertently given me a new one: advocate, survivor, success story. That irony was the sweetest revenge of all. My life had transformed completely. I had a thriving business, a home I loved, genuine friendships built on mutual respect rather than obligation, and work that mattered. I'd stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next crisis my mother would create. She no longer had that power. I'd taken it back. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about her. I wondered if she ever really understood what she'd done, if she'd ever taken actual accountability rather than just feeling sorry for herself. I'd never know. The door I'd closed was locked permanently. I didn't hate her. I'd moved beyond that. I simply recognized her for what she was, someone incapable of loving anyone more than she loved herself. That wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I started dating again, something I'd avoided during the chaos of the legal battle. I met someone kind, someone who respected boundaries, and someone who saw me as a partner rather than a resource. We took things slowly, building trust carefully. I was learning that healthy relationships existed, that not everyone would exploit my success or make me pay for their affection. My therapist smiled when I shared this during one of our sessions. "You've come so far, Emily," she said. "You've reclaimed your life." I had. And I'd never let anyone take it from me again. The final piece of poetic justice came unexpectedly. I received a call from that same debt collector who'd knocked on my door 2 years earlier. "Miss Hartwell, this is Daniel Morris from Capital Recovery Services. I wanted to inform you that we've closed the case on your mother's accounts." "Thank you," I said, wondering why he was calling me about her debts. "There's something else," he continued. "During our collection efforts, your mother provided us with what she claimed was your current business information. She said you were working with her to resolve the debts." I nearly laughed. Even now, she was using my name. "When we looked into it," Daniel continued, "we found that you run a successful financial consultancy. We've actually been following your work on financial abuse prevention." He paused. "We'd like to hire your firm to help us develop better protocols for identifying identity theft cases. We don't want to victimize fraud victims like we almost did with you." I agreed to send a proposal. When I hung up, I looked at my business cards spread across my desk. The same cards I'd designed in my darkest moment were now opening doors I'd never imagined. My mother had tried to define me as a debtor. The collector had delivered her a copy of my new business card, and she'd learned the truth. I was the one in control now. I'd turned her betrayal into my breakthrough, her exploitation into my expertise. She'd stolen my identity, but I'd built a better one. As I prepared the proposal for capital recovery services, I realized something profound. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. My mother's worst act had become the catalyst for my greatest success. I'd walked through fire and emerged stronger, clearer, and finally, completely free. I smiled as I typed the last line of the proposal, then printed out a fresh business card and held it up to the light. Emily Hartwell, founder and CEO, Hartwell Financial Solutions. Not a victim. Not a debtor. Not anyone's puppet. Just me. Finally, truly, beautifully me.